So, Dr. Angelo, today we're going to hear about being productive versus being busy.
Mm.
Which I'm neither sometimes, but
It's something that comes up a lot with my clients is people describe themselves as being busy. And I wanted to tackle this because it's very important to be clear about verbiage and about intent. So I see that a lot when people, I'm sure you've heard it, Greg and Carly, it's, I'm so busy today, it's crazy. And think about that and why is that? Why do people say, I'm so busy today or my day was crazy? And I don't like this type of mentality because it can lead to fatigue and eventually burnout, right? And I always very mindful of what you're putting out into the universe, right? If you're putting it into out in the universe, I'm crazy and busy, guess what? The universe won't send you patience because if you believe in that kind of stuff, they're not going to send a busy person patience. I actually think you can be productive without having to be busy all the time. So why do some clinicians, Greg, can see people in 5 minutes while it takes some clinicians 20 minutes and get the exact same clinical outcome? You ever ask yourself?
really, I don't know. I'm not being a chiropractor. I don't know the answer to that.
It's out there, and I think Carly can attest to it. It's some chiropractors will spend 20, 30, 40 minutes with a patient, 15 minutes, and some will spend two and they get the exact same outcome. As long as you're getting the same outcome, I would look at that 2 to 3 minute visit as being much more productive, right? And if you're much more productive, you're gonna have way better bottom end when it comes to the end of the day. So the biggest things that I see that tend to busy chiropractors or people is there's about seven or eight. One is talking too much with patients that are not about their care. Okay. So things like the weather, things like that kind of stuff, the soccer game, the hockey game, those things are not about about patient care. And some chiropractors will say, that's how I build a bond. You don't build a bond by talking. You build a bond by being fully present and being obsessed with correcting the patient's problem. So talking too much is one of the biggest things that I find that tends to rob chiropractors of their production. Talking too much with your staff, what is useful for versus what is not, right? Do we need to be stopping and talking to our staff every 2 seconds? Or should we have blocked times to do that, whether it be a huddle or meeting? Carly, can you describe to people on the call how many times a day do I or we talk to the staff? Let's
Right before we start and right when we're done. But if there was an emergency call in or something, then the staff would come to us in the back, but that happens very rare.
Yeah. So we start a morning with a huddle, which I all suggest you guys are on the call or whoever's listening to this. It's a 2 minute check-in to make sure you understand what's going on. And if there's another chiropractor in the office, we're both there at the same time. Then if I've got all that set out, I don't have to talk to the staff one more time and they don't have to talk to me. Now you got to have good systems and procedures in place, but the chit chat is brought to a minimum, everything's systematized, and I can go on about my day doing what I need to do, and they can go about their day doing what they need to do. This morning, I don't think I stop at the front desk once. Might have stopped there once for an emergency, but that goes 4 hours without having to speak to my staff. So that can really increase your productivity versus being busy all the time and chit chatter, right? You can have a box system or stickies where things go into, you can maybe describe our box system, how that works.
Yeah, I think first though you should touch on the system because our system you can send a note. So if we have a schedule or something like that, we can send it to the front desk without physically being there. I think that helps us a lot. But for our box system, if we have a progress exam, for example, or new patient paperwork, instead of taking it back to my office, I place it upside down in a secure spot, and then the front desk staff can grab that throughout the morning, the afternoon, etc.
Yep. So
And
we have an inbox and an outbox. They put it in our inbox. We do what we need to do, and it goes in our outbox versus having to explain to the staff every single time. Get it done and get it into the outbox so they come and grab it and off they go. Again, trying to cut down the amount of chatter into the going on in the office. The other thing too is I'm a big believer is once or twice a year do a do delegate or dump kind of test. What do you need to do? Test yourself, right? What are the three or four things that you have to do as a doctor? I want you to write it down for those of you who are going to listen to this recording. Write the two or three or four things that you need to do. Then look at everything else that you do during a day. So write down the other 20 or 30, 40 things that you do, right? And I want you to do with that column is look at what can you delegate? What are those 20 or 30 things can you delegate to someone else? Whether it be your staff member, will it be a part-time worker, maybe it's a contract worker, right? And the last thing is what are things on that list that you don't have to do, right? What are things that you can completely dump, right? And you may think, oh, we have to do this. Do you really have to do it? Sit and think about that. Look at the list and actually get rid of things. Dump them, delegate them, and focus on the 3 or 4 things that you and only you can do. That'll make you much, much more productive, right? The other thing is I see people doing prep time during prime time. So prime time is when we're seeing patients, right? You start adjusting, boom. All you should be doing is adjusting, talking to patients, examining patients, right? You shouldn't be mixing prep time, whether you have to read an x-ray or write a medical note. That stuff should be doing in what's called prep time, which is before and after your prime time. Think of a surgeon. The surgeon doesn't go into surgery and be interrupted 3 or 4 times because he's got to finish a medical note or sign a document. He closes those OR doors and he or she is doing that surgery. Think of it the same way. Your prime time is you're in your prime time. You shouldn't be coming out of that adjusting zone or that treating zone. Then doing your prep time outside of that would make you much more productive. The other thing that I see busy's office is cell phones. Okay. What do you think the average amount of time? I want to ask Greg this question. What do you think the average time a person spends, if you add it up all the time, on their phone in a day? How many minutes do you think it would be?
It's probably would astound all of us. I would guess it would be probably over 4 hours, probably.
It's closer to 90 minutes, the average person, like
Oh,
90 full minutes. So it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
all right.
But
Still,
it's
that's a
90.
lot.
Yeah, and the reason is because we don't spend a lot of time. We're going back and forth. I read this really neat article and I listened to a podcast, TED Talks, on how people switch back and forth to their phone a lot. And why that's a problem is every time you have to switch back and forth, your brain has to change gears. All right. It has to make a new connection to focus on something else and then come back to what you're doing. And actually, it was neat. The neuroscientist says it actually chews up glucose. Like your brain needs more sugars in order to do that. So think about it. I'm getting off topic here, but everyone loves to multitask, right? There is actually no such thing as multitasking. Your brain can't do it. Your brain can't do 4 things at once. It does one thing and then changes and then changes. You're not doing 4 things at once. So the better thing to do is do one thing, complete it, and then move on. So having your phone on your desk and having to swap back and forth in conversations and text and whatever you're doing can actually be detrimental to your overall mental health, but also it'll fatigue you by the end of the day. So I always say when you're in prime time, I've told my staff this, and Carly can attest to this. We're all adults, but put that phone somewhere where it's away from you. Focus in on your prime time for an hour and then answer your text and your messages after, right? The other thing too, which is a major cause of being busy versus productive, is not block or cluster booking. And we talked about this on previous calls. Anyone that is interested in knowing that, go back and see the recordings, or we can do a new recording on this. So not clustering patients together, scheduling one every 20 minutes. So it's this long drag out process, clustering them together so you get more stuff done in a shorter period of time. And then that frees up your time to do other things. So those are the big, like 7 or 8 things that I see with my clients that tend to busy themselves and robs themselves of productions. So the thing I want every time you guys get off this call, and whoever is watching this in the recording, is try to take some action off of the information you get here today. The thing I'd like to see is you consider is block and cluster booking. All right. That cluster booking will free up your staff and yourself to be much more productive. So I want you to consider doing that. If you don't know what that is, reach out to us and we can explain it in more detail. I want you to consider talking less. Do whatever you got to do. Put a rubber band on every time on your wrist, and every time you catch yourself talking too much, give it a flick or something. But I want you to consider talking a little less to each patient and focusing only on their care. Whatever the conversation is, keep it on their care, and you'll see it'll start to shorten that amount of time. The second thing is I want you to consider having quick huddles or little meetings with your teams every morning and every night. Every time you start a shift and every time you end it, you should have a 5 minute, as if it was a football team, ready to make a play. I want you guys to huddle with your staff before and at the end of your shift. The do, delegate, or dump. I want you to do that 2 times a year. I like to do that first thing in the new year and about midsummer, is actually that writing test. I said, write everything you do down during a day. Anybody can do this. You can be a staff member, you can be an associate, you can be a doc. Write it all down on a piece of paper. And I want you to highlight the 3 or 4 things that only you can do. All right. And once you're done that, you look at the rest of the things that aren't highlighted and you figure out how can that be delegated and does it need to be done at all? I promise you, if you do this test, you will find you're going to get a lot more productive and less being busy. And then look at your separating your prime time versus your prep time versus your play time. So I look at the week in 3 things: prime, prep, and play. We do the prime and prep so we can play on the weekends and evenings, right? So your prime time, which I explained, is only do your treatment or your adjustments in that prime time. Okay, shrink it, cluster better, whatever you got to do, but only do that. Don't be working on other things. Then make sure you book prep time. I actually book it into my schedule. So if I start a shift at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I've booked prep time 2 to 3. Okay, Greg, you call me to go to lunch. Oh, let's go to lunch at 1:30. I can't because I've got a commitment on my schedule that I've got to prep all my stuff before I start my afternoon. So you want to have your prime time blocked off. You want to put some prep time in there, and then you block off your play time. And the important part of the play time is you shouldn't be doing work when you go home at 7 o'clock, because if you've done your job properly and you've got your prep done, your prime time, there's no reason why you need to be working at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night doing notes, right? This whole thing we're doing here, even the ads, right? The ads and these calls, it's all to make you more successful and increase your bottom line so that you can enjoy things more. We need to reward ourselves. And the reward is more playtime with our friends and family to enjoy the things that we want to do. So I'll end just quickly on my story, and I've got a witness here to attest to it. I ran an office, I still do, but I ran an office for years where I was seeing 400 patient visits a week on 6 half-day shifts. Okay, 6 half-day, you can call it 3 days. So when you do this stuff properly, you can get to that level. So that means I had 2 days off a week that I could focus on some prep time, but also be there for a growing family, right? I had 3 young kids and a wife that needed me. So I was able to complete over 400 visits a week on 6 half-day shifts. And now, and Carly can attest that, now I've dropped down to close to 250 visits and I'm only there on 4 half-day shifts. Right? I've got all my x-rays prepped. I got all that stuff done. I'm teaching her how to do that as well so that we can play more, right? The whole idea is let's play more. Let's free ourselves up. Nobody needs, who wants to slave Greg from 7 in the morning till 7 at night? Nobody, right? We want to make sure we're efficient, productive. We can make some good money and be with the people that we love, right? So that's what today's call is about. I hope you can get a few action steps that you can apply, that you can start doing tomorrow. Cool. Any questions? Comments?
We had a couple late joiners, and I think everybody's getting really dependent upon the replays. We need to think of how to get more people live.
Maybe
we'll have to put that out there.
We'll give
Yeah.
Parker and Kelsey, they're joined late. We were talking about being busy versus being productive. A lot of people want to be busy, which I hate that term. And this call was all built around being productive so that you can shrink your time seeing people and increase the time for prep and for play. I know you caught the tail end of it, but any comments or questions on that, or anything that you want me to repeat? All good?
I'll get transcripts and highlights out to everybody. I'll have that out today. I'm going to be productive and get that out today. How about that?
Yeah. Carly, any comments, anything that I missed that you think I know that runs in our office that I've overlooked?
I don't think so. You were saying something and I should have written it down. I didn't want to interrupt.
We have it recorded.
Yeah, you should interrupt. Yeah. So
Oh, just your suggestions for when you told me I couldn't do any prep, even if it was like a quick paperwork or something during prime time. You had suggestions for me, like maybe don't go on my phone and answer emails, but put music in or something like that instead of just like sitting staring at
yeah.
the screen or kind of
Yeah,
waiting.
thank you. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. When I brought this to her, so everything that I teach to my clients, obviously I've taught to Carly, and I said, I don't want you doing anything during prime time. And she started off in practice and she was like, she wasn't, just brand new into practice, so she was not heavy on the volume yet. And she's looking at me like, okay, what am I going to do? It's 2 hours. I'm going to see 3 or 4 patients. I said, put some music in and meditate, do something, but don't get in the habit of answering emails and text. I'm a big believer in habits. If you set up that, if you want to grow, you have to do the habits you need to do in order for that growth to happen. Act as if you're seeing, I've told you this before, act as if you're seeing 300 visits a week, even if it's 10 visits a week, right? Because if you start doing things at 10 visits a week, I'll answer this and I'll answer that email and I'll take personal calls and I'll, let the dog in on the ring, whatever. If you start doing stuff like that, you're going to create that habit and you'll never get out of that habit and you'll never grow. So I told her she will put, not anymore because I know she's getting busier, but she used to throw her AirPods in and she'd sit there listening to music or she'd meditate. And now you're having less and less of that, but act as if you're seeing 300, right? Get dressed for the day as if you're going to see 300 patients, right? Get up in the morning and exercise and prep your day. I've told you this before. Get ready for your day. Don't roll in 2 minutes before you see, even if you're starting to see 5 or 10 patients a day and you're new, actively, you're going to see 50 or 60, right? Because I'm a big believer in the universe. If you tell the universe, I'm late, I'm tired, and I'm busying myself with stuff, the universe will not send you patients. I guarantee you. And one of my mentors said a long time ago when I was breaking through the 200 visits a week and 300 visits a week, what you do today is not what you need to do tomorrow in order to grow. So just be ready. Like you got to create a vacuum in your schedule. If you're not happy with your growth, look at your schedule, move it around, cluster patients together, and create a vacuum in your schedule. Create an afternoon, like move people around. Go, I've just now freed up my Thursday afternoons. And guess what happens? Guess what will happen? The phone will ring, the ads will bring people in, and you'll fill up your Thursday afternoon. But you got to push yourself and you got to act like you're ready to see more. Sorry, thanks for bringing that up. I got on a crazy tangent, but I thought that was
That's okay.
Any other questions, concerns, and any check-ins? Mark, Parker, Kelsey, everybody good? Good.
All good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Greg, I agree. We gotta brainstorm. Maybe we can toss around in an email if a 1 p.m. start or 12:45 would be better for people. It shifts 15 minutes. I'm fine with that. I'd love to get more conversations going, but I'll leave that to you.
Okay, so we'll do a couple of polls. We'll do one we're on the Clinic Growth 360 Face group. Hopefully everybody who's listening to this, whether live or later, has joined that. I'll make sure I put a link to that in the email that goes out with this. And secondly, I guess I'll just send an email survey to everybody and we'll see if anybody has suggestions and we'll see if a 1 p.m. Eastern
Yep.
is better.
Yep, I can shift
So,
it happen.
yeah, and so we're a little bit done a little bit sooner, which is great. It's nice to have a slightly shorter one for a change. And thanks everybody. Everybody knows how to get a hold of me. And as usual, when I send this out, I'll put how to get a hold of Dr. Angelo too.
Okay, have a great week.
Thanks everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.